Let's do it.
Anything I now know about strength training has come from Emma Hebborn. We all know we should do it as we get older. Targeted resistance training builds stronger bones. It creates better support for our tendons and ligaments, and it helps with improved balance, all of which should mean fewer injuries. But what is the right sort of targeted training? And how do you prevent the training itself from causing injuries?
So, got my barbell. And I won't be able to talk once I'm braced because my air will be pushed down. So
Emma has helped me answer both of these questions because she seems to have a niche in helping older folk get stronger. It helped that her gym, Wolf House in Fort William, is quite close to our home in the Scottish Highlands. Now this is quite a long conversation. You can watch a cut-down version with demonstrations as part of the Older Athlete series on the Always Another Adventure YouTube channel. There is a link attached. This full conversation is available as a video or audio podcast, and we start by defining what we mean by strength.
in the fitness industry, in a way, it's become more complicated because there's lots of different things that people want to sell you, whether it's training or products. But strength is simple. So like the definition of strength in sporting terms is the capacity of your body to withstand an external resistance. So that is what we know as strength. As a personal trainer or a strength coach, it's the person's body's capacity to withstand an external resistance or force. So especially in terms of what we want to talk about getting older and staying strong or getting stronger.
Yeah,
but that'll be okay.
you'll answer it.
But there's also another definition in terms of a performance definition is the ability of the person to produce force as well. So in my opinion, from my experience and sort of what I coach, is that strength is your ability to withstand force and also your capacity to produce force against an external resistance.
So from someone who wants to stay fit and keep doing their thing,
Yes.
but not necessarily, they don't get into weightlifting.
Yes.
How do you work out what they should be doing?
So always the first thing that you should ask yourself is, what is the goal? And then where are you in comparison to the goal? So relative to the person. So for example, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, and I've had people in really, really good shape who in their mind, they want to get strong, and it's all relative to them. I actually currently coach quite a few people who are in their 60s and their 70s, and they have never done strength training before, but they are quite different in their starting positions. Some are stronger than others because of their lifestyle. So it depends on the starting position, really, of the person. So if you're quite a frail individual, your strength training is going to look very different to someone like yourself, who's been physically active most of your life.
And I'm going to be weaker than the forester who's been hauling logs all his life.
Right, yeah. So you might be weaker than somebody who's had a really tough, in terms of manual labour, job. Their strength might be different, but then you also have genetics. So you have people who are, in general, just stronger than others. And you'll hear people in the gym say, like, oh, he's naturally very strong. And like, what does that mean? It probably means that genetically they're quite gifted in that way. Maybe their parents are quite athletic. And it comes down to things like bone density, muscle density. It comes down to like your environment growing up, what your lifestyle's been like. So, I think my first PT client was in Edinburgh. And it was funny because the first person I ever coached was an elderly person. Their husband had just died. They realised, I can't carry my shopping. So she lived in this Edinburgh house that quite a lot of them have these big steep concrete steps. And she realised for about 40 years, she hadn't carried the shopping up the steps because her husband always did it. And she suddenly realised, I'm not strong enough. So she was quite frail. So my approach for getting her strong, it was her strong enough to do that task. So it was simply carrying kettlebells that weighed about 4 kilos. But for you, that's not strength training.
So is there a commonality between us all? I was thinking more of stuff I think we discussed earlier in terms of hinge points and things.
Yes. So the thing that will be the same for everybody, regardless of where they start, is that the training has to be a challenge to some extent. It has to stimulate the muscle tissue enough for the body to make an adaptation. That's the common ground.
But in particular areas, I mean, for aging, I'm thinking of hips, knees, what,
Yeah.
Getting out of a chair, this sort
Yes.
of stuff, or is that not relevant?
Yeah, definitely. So like you've got the idea that physically you want to be stronger or strong enough for what you need to do. So there's that sort of basic understanding. But then it's the movement patterns. So we want to be strong for certain tasks. So for my first ever PT client, who was in her 70s, it was walking up steps, holding something. So those movement patterns were like flexion, extension of the knee. It was like stability of her core. It was her grip strength. But we can look at the functions of the body. So we can break it down into things like a squat, a hinge, a press, some rotation. So we have those things in the gym that we want to look at. We don't really want to only work in one plane of motion. We want to make sure that the person is, you'll hear the term a lot, functional. So we've got this term now that's like really popular, functional fitness. And the basis of that is that the person is strong in their everyday life. They're prepared. So you would look at your lifestyle and what you want to achieve. For some people, that would be, if I fell over, I have the functionality and strength to get back up. So that could be even something when you look at like a Turkish get-up, laying on the floor and getting up. Or it might be being sat on a chair. And, you hear about people who lose the ability to get out of a chair. So they have these chairs, but tip them up. And you'll see the adverts. It's like, oh, no, don't lose the ability to do that. So the ability to squat, for example, is really important because everyone needs to squat just to sit down, to go to the toilet. Everyone needs to squat. So we'll look at particular movements that we should and we want to strengthen for general preparedness.
And someone who's coming into this at the age of mid-50s or mid-60s, who doesn't really need worry too much about just getting their shopping up the stairs, but wants to maintain the function they have and perhaps to do a sport, whether it's running, cycling, whatever.
Yeah.
Are you looking at similar things, but just trying to enhance it?
Yeah. And I think the key is to keep doing it. So to maintain
Well, keep
something.
doing the sport, because that's not really doing it. It's the extra stuff, isn't it? It's the stuff that I do in here that I would never have dreamt of doing.
Yes. So what you probably would have found is that if you continue doing your sport and not doing any strength training, you'd probably hit a pretty severe plateau and you might not.
Oh, I did that a while ago.
Right?
I did that.
Okay. So you'll hit a plateau. So what you're capable of is what you're capable of. And if you keep doing the same thing, there's no new stimulus. And then when you bring into the fact that the body begins to age, so lots of different things happening, whether your bone density decreases, especially if you're a female, or if your muscle density decreases and you have muscle atrophy. Or
there are fewer fibres, aren't there, in your muscles?
Fewer fibres, yeah. Or simply like your energy levels are lower. So maybe your drive to be outside isn't as high, but for whatever reason, your performance starts to plateau massively. And then because of the aging factors and how it affects your body, it will decrease. So the only real way to combat that is to do something else that's manageable in terms of your energy and in terms of your current functionality to improve your performance. So it's almost like it's the quickest way is to get into the gym and make your body stronger, and stronger by doing things that don't put you at risk of injury, don't totally exhaust you, things that are manageable and for your level achievable. And then you just build on those blocks.
But have to challenge you to get that stimulus.
Yeah. So you're never going to build muscle tissue without a challenge. So often the biggest problem I see, so people that come to me and they say, I'm not getting any stronger. And generally when I look at their training, they'll be really obsessing over what exercises, how many sets, how many reps, and it's completely irrelevant if the intensity isn't high enough. So they would have obsessed about, is the squat the best way for me to grow my quads? Or is it the hack squat? Or is it a Bulgarian split squat? It doesn't matter. What matters is the intensity, because if you back squat, Bulgarian split squat, hack squat, leg press, 3 sets of 10 to 12, if it's not hard enough, it won't change your body. So generally it's like, okay, you're doing all of the right things, but it's too easy. You need to really work hard. The intensity has to be there for the stimulus to happen.
Now, I think it was almost a year ago when I came to see you for the first time. And we talked about this, and we went through the sort of things I was doing, and I've documented those in some of the very early videos in the Older Athlete series. And I think you said to me, you're doing endurance stuff.
Okay.
And could you just talk me through these different sorts of strength between that just traditional strength that you're working towards with me now, compared to what I had been doing, and compared to what one of my friends said are the guys who walk around the gym with their arms not touching, the carpet carriers.
The invisible carpets. Yeah, exactly.
That was a brilliant phrase.
Exactly.
Anyway, could you just talk me through those different sorts of...
Okay, so there's different types of training, and then with that, there'll be different
goals.
Outcomes, and the reason for the training is the different goals. So I think accidentally what you were doing was endurance or conditioning even. So you were already strong enough to, say, lunge or squat with, let's just call it 6 or 8 kilo kettlebell. You were already strong enough to do that, so much so that you could do it for sets of very high reps. So you're not really getting any stronger, but because of the high repetitions, if you were doing that to fatigue, you might be pushing into the realms of hypertrophy, meaning increasing muscle size, or you might be pushing into the realms of your body was so conditioned to it that you could do it all day long, which is endurance. So I think you just accidentally slipped into one of those categories.
In short, it was too easy for me.
It was too easy.
So fewer reps, but a much more challenging intensity.
What you specifically needed, if the goal was gaining strength and we wanted increased muscle strength, bone density, was that we needed a bigger load. So it needed to be more difficult, more intense, but we couldn't really increase the reps because you're already doing quite a lot of reps. So we wanted to increase the load to make it more difficult. And that would give your body the correct stimulus to then change to be bigger and stronger.
Before we talk about the detail of some of this, let's just talk about injury, because why do we need to get stronger as we age?
Oh. So specifically for when a human ages, some of the problems that, say, 70 plus, hopefully 70 plus, hopefully not younger, some of the problems they'll come across is especially if you're female and your hormones are changing, bone density will decrease, muscle atrophy, so the process where you're losing muscle tissue might start. We might lose balance. We might not have the coordination or the stability to do a task without falling over. So the reason why we want people to stay strong is so that their joints are stable. They still have that decent proprioception, so they're not going to fall over. And if they do fall over, their body is strong enough, and we go back to that first definition we talked about, strong enough to withstand the force. They have the capacity to withstand a certain amount of force, and it should prevent serious injury.
I have to say, the curious thing is I have struggled to find the word for it, but I have actually felt more robust in the time that we've been doing this. And that, which is crazy because I've gone and got myself a knee injury, but I know why that is. And I suppose that is a key element to it, that you can feel happier doing what you are doing, just in almost in general in everyday life.
In everyday life. So some of the things you might be feeling is that your joints are more stable because your strength in the muscle tissue around the joints is better. You've got more strength. The joint is more stable. But not only that, but because of the movement patterns that you practice in the gym, things like lunging, squatting, hinging, or twisting, because you're doing those under load, but the repetition of doing them as well, you're getting better at those movements. So when you're doing them in your everyday life, you're just better practice. So you're more confident, you're more stable. So I think that's probably what you're feeling. That's why you feel robust.
How would you best want to teach people to do this? I'm trying to get the difference here between coming to the gym, and our needs are such that we come to the gym once a week and we do 2 sessions a week at home. If we can, sometimes it's 1 session a week at home. And it's not religion for us, but we try to keep it up.
Yes.
There is a value in doing both, isn't there? Explain to me why you think there is a value in both, and then let's get on to talking about the specificity of what happens in the gym and why you kind of need help to do that. We'll come on to that bit.
Okay. So the question being...
why is there a value in doing both?
Why is there value in doing both? Some lower level stuff at home.
Yeah, exactly.
And also being in the gym.
Yes.
So the way that you're going to become more prepared for everyday life is getting stronger, practicing movement patterns. And if you think about how convenient it is for a person to train, sometimes being at home, you'll be able to do that more often and more consistently. So that's ticking some good boxes. The consistency, if you're more consistent at home and it fits into your lifestyle, that is a really good option.
And consistency matters.
Consistency matters. It's the repetition of the movement. And it's like, 'cause that's going to build your confidence, but it's also going to build your skill level. If you think about how motor patterns work from your brain to how your body responds to it, repetition is key. So we want the consistency there. And then for being in the gym, the reason why you would need to be in the gym is if you didn't have enough load available to you at home.
Right.
So if it gets too easy and you keep pushing on the reps and the sets, you're not really getting stronger by definition of being able to, have the capacity to withstand force. But your endurance is getting better. And
but
that's
I'm
not
back
a bad
where
thing.
I was, really.
It's not a waste
I'm back
of
where
time.
I was, but a bit higher up. But
yeah, exactly. So you're going to need more weight.
So whereas my neighbour down the road, who's gone and got himself a squat rack, he's got the whole works. He's got a mini gym in there.
He does. He's got a great gym.
We haven't. We've got a few dumbbells and a bench, and that's fine for us. But if you kind of want those weights, this is the place to come.
Yeah. So not everyone can build a home gym. Like, they don't have the space. And also, like, you might want to come to a place where this is where you do it and you can switch off from your home life and you can separate it and there's no distractions. And when you're here, you mean business. But the main reason is you need more load. To get strong, you need to put your body under some resistance and a good enough amount of resistance that your body will adapt. So you'll need, for the deadlift, like I weigh about 72 kilos. For me, if I was at home and I only had a kettlebell, I might have at the largest a 32 kilo kettlebell. That's not half my body weight. Ideally, if I want to be a really strong human, I'm going to need at least my body weight. So that's when we come to a gym, we use a barbell and we can easily add load, no problem at all.
Right. Let's talk about the different sorts of weights we have, because you've got all these machines in here, staggering array of them, some of them nice and new, but you've also got what I would say would be really kind of, people would have recognized from a gym 20, 30 years ago. You've got barbells, you've got weights. So what's the interplay between the two? When do you use one? When do you use the other?
Yeah, so that is a good question. So your barbells and your dumbbells, they're what we call free weights. It's like a description that we use to separate machine work to barbells, is that they're free weights, meaning the human is in control of that weight. So that whatever bar path that barbell takes is completely dependent on the human. So in general, free weights pose a little bit more risk of injury compared to fixed weights. So fixed weights being machines, so like a chest press machine, or even a cable machine is somewhere in the middle, because it's fixed to some extent, but you have control over it as well. But the machines that are fixed, that will control the range of motion. And you're really just isolating a muscle tissue in one movement. So for example, let's take a chest press. You're going from here to a straight arm. You're adducting the humerus, so you're using your pec, and you're extending your elbow, so you're using your tricep. But because it's on a machine, it's guiding you in that path. If you drop it, very low consequence. If you're doing a bench press, which is essentially the same movement, horizontal, if you drop it, there is high consequence. Or if you cannot press that, again, high consequence.
Because this whole weight drops down on your chest. Yeah,
chest,
hence you have the safety arms and everything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then
I was doing this morning, actually, just funnily enough.
You did your press?
I did my press, yes.
And what you'll find in your bench press, especially if you're very new to bench press, is that the stability of the barbell is completely up to the human. And when you're new to a movement, it might feel quite wobbly. And as we practice, we get more in tune with that movement, we build these good motor patterns, we build the stability in the joints that we're using, as well as the strength, and we're able to guide that under control, no problem.
Yeah, isn't that wobbliness a good thing in a way? I remember, sitting on balance balls when I was typing, because that's kind of that, you're working other smaller muscles too.
Sort of, because the more unstable the exercise, the harder you have to work to stabilize it. But the more unstable, probably the lower the weight is going to be.
Oh, right.
And the lower the weight, how much strength can we gain? So there's a bit of give and take. But the two versions of that, so let's take a barbell squat versus a squat standing on a Bosu ball. They both have their place. They both have different goals. The Bosu ball, possibly this person has ankles that he rolls often, and a physio said, you really need to work on your stability. So we have said, okay, we specifically want to work on your stability, so we're going to challenge that. But then if the barbell squat is more the person is wanting to get stronger legs, but also stronger core. We'll talk about that when we do the squats, but because it's a free weight, you're controlling the barbell, so it's a full body movement. But the idea of the barbell where it's stable and it's safe is that we can put on quite a lot of load safely. So the two different goals.
Why would you not just come in a gym and go, okay, I'm going to put some weight on here and I'm going to try squatting?
So most people who come to a gym do come and do a bit of trial and error. And
you usually get
fine.
an induction, don't you?
We get an induction, and I'll always recommend an induction. If you've never squatted with a barbell, it's worth getting coaching. You'll have people who can squat really well straight off the bat, and they're really natural squatters, and they'll get by. But in general, the safest and most efficient way is to get a coach. And they can say, right, here's a barbell. Here's how you set up the squat rack for you. Because I'll see it all the time in the gym. I'll walk through the gym and I'll see people sort of on their tiptoes and just like, really desperate to get the bar back on the rack, but they haven't set the J-cups to the right height. So it's a little bit dangerous. So these small things, so a coach will be like, this is how you set the squat rack. And these are the safety arms. And this is the barbell. And for you personally, because if you're a mechanics, I would try this kind of a squat. And then we'll test it and we'll have a look at it. And you do a little bit of troubleshooting with that person, because everyone is going to squat different. They have to. If you look at in terms of mechanics of the person's body, lever length, it makes a huge difference to how someone is going to be able to squat. So getting a coach for that reason alone,
it's worth it.
It's really worth it.
And the other reason, bracing. Tell me about that, because that was completely new to me. Never. I mean, I know about bracing, but that's something you do when you're sea kayaking.
Ah, okay. So you do it when you're sea kayaking. So,
but that's to do with sticking your paddle out to one side.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with your core. It's not your core, is it? It's we're gone.
Well,
it is.
Yeah,
it is and it
core.
isn't. But explain it to me.
Yeah. So when our body has load applied to the body, The only thing that stops us from folding in half like a deck chair or crumbling is how we resist against that external force. So when you're in a barbell squat, for example, we think about it as being a leg exercise, which it is a leg exercise. You're squatting down, you're standing up. But your spine, which is a very movable thing, right? We're not just got a big rod down the middle of our bodies, it moves. And if I were to put 100 kilos on myself on a barbell and not brace, I would fold in half and it'd be very dangerous. It would hurt. So bracing is a technique where we essentially make our body as rigid as we can to withstand this external force. So specifically with a barbell in, say, a barbell squat, a bracing technique is we'll use air and our diaphragm and also the muscles in our stomach, specifically transverse abdominis. We'll push out, we'll use our air, take a big deep breath in with our diaphragm, push the air down, and we'll expand our belly. And we create what's called intra-abdominal pressure. And it's essentially going from a wobbly, loose spine to a rigid, braced spine that can withstand 100 kilos if it needs to. So.
No, absolutely. Yeah. This was a revelation to me, and it's also why another vote for, in my view, a coach for this.
Coaching. It's amazing how many times I'll see people, and I've known them to be in the gym for a couple of years. You know, I've seen them around the gym, and they'll eventually come to me and say, "Oh, I just cannot get any further with my deadlift," and I don't know why. And also, sometimes my deadlift, it hurts. Sometimes the next day, I've got a really sore lower back. So we'll do a bit of coaching, and the first thing I notice is that they're not bracing anywhere near hard enough. So they're not preparing their body for this external resistance enough. And then there's other mechanical things that tends to be the reason why they've got a sore lower back. The barbell might be too far away from their body and it's creating too much pressure, things like this. But in general, a poor bracing technique is the main reason why somebody isn't coping with the load. And as soon as I teach them a good brace, they can add 5 to 10 kilos onto their maxes. So a good brace, it goes a long way.
How do you find a good PT? How do you find a good gym?
That is a tricky one. I think in the UK it's getting better.
Is it because of the rise of the free gyms? Not the free gyms, the pure gyms, the 24-hour ones. You don't see a soul.
Yeah. So these gyms, for example, they are literally just facilities. So there's very little coaching. There might be classes. And it does do the job. You know, they're open, they've got the equipment available. It does the job if you know what you're doing.
Sorry, I interrupted you about finding a PT. Okay. I beg your pardon.
The fitness industry, when it began, it boomed, and we were lacking a governing body to make sure that people who are calling themselves were professionals were actually professionals and they had the right training. So I feel like now there's lots of really good courses out there. There are a lot of really good PTs. But I think the best way to find a good PT is to have a chat with a PT. And you'll know straight away their depth of knowledge or how much they care. When I first started out, it was probably about 8 years ago, I definitely didn't know what I know now. I knew enough to help somebody get fitter and stronger safely. But the key for me back then, if I didn't know something, was to just be like, oh, I don't know the answers to that. And go research and go find it and help them or ask a PT who's more experienced. So the best thing you can do is speak to the PT, tell them your goals. Some of the green flags for a good PT is a PT that wants to understand what your goal is, why, any injuries, your history, what you've done in the gym before, and a PT that wants to understand you. What are you capable of right now? What do we need to be cautious of in terms of health issues or previous injuries? What do you enjoy? And then also, is the PT somebody who can actually teach you? Is their teaching style something that you can gel with? Are you going to be able to understand their instructions? So I think every person will gel with a PT in a different way. And I've got a couple of PTs that work in this gym. And when I have people inquire, I always think, right, who would be best suited to this person, personality-wise and like the interests? So it will be very specific to the person, who's a good PT for that person. But like I said, the green flags is a PT who's really interested in why and how they're going to help you. So why you're there and how they're going to help you. Those are the big green flags.
Can I ask you how you got into this whole thing? Would that be appropriate? Can I?
Yeah, of course.
Well, what about because you were you competed and you were in the military where you kind of were carrying heavy packs and needed this strength. How did the whole thing start with strength with you?
I originally got into sport as a really young person. So as a kid, I was always obsessed with sport. So football, gymnastics, even ballet, dancing. I grew up down south. All of these sports were available to me. Played on a football team. I just loved it. It was just like really outdoorsy and sporty. My parents moved to Fort William when I was young. And it was sort of like, we moved to Spean Bridge. And there wasn't a great deal for me to do. And there was a big forest behind our house. And I used to go running, like long distance running or walking and cycling. I was just like really into it. And when I was 15, like the winters are pretty harsh in Fort William. When I was 15, I realised, I don't know if I want to be in the forest all the time. And I lied on a form to get into the local gym. I said I was 16, even though I was 15. And I just watched people and I was just like, there's no women in here. So the little cardio area, there was a couple women here and there and a couple girls. And I took some of my friends, but they didn't really last. They were kind of like, I'm not really into this. And I'd be on the treadmill and I'd be like looking around, just sussing it out. And the weights room was like full of men, but I thought, well, that looks really fun. I want to do that. And I slowly kind of snuck up there and I just started like copying and doing some bits and bobs. And I couldn't understand, why are there no women here? And then very soon after that, I joined the military. And in basic training, all the girls are together and all the boys are together in their accommodation. And some of the different phases that you go through, you kind of get grouped together with women. And I realised that hardly any of us had any experience with being strong, yet what the military was asking of us required a lot of strength. So like my first tour of Afghan, for example, like you have to carry so much load and my body, it just wasn't up to it. And I didn't want to be the weak link. So when I came back to the UK, my main goal was I want to train, I want to get stronger, I want to be able to run, lunge, jump really well, under load. And I started actually going to a CrossFit box. So yeah, it actually started with CrossFit and then I found powerlifting and then I've just been obsessed with strength ever since.
And you've competed at powerlifting as well.
Oh, quite a lot.
Show off, please.
Oh gosh, so I would say bench press is my most successful. And I've had a British record in bench press and I've been to world championships and won a world championships.
So you're now in a different phase of your career though. I mean, do you enjoy the coaching? Do you enjoy bringing people on?
Yeah. The fitness industry, there's lots that you can do within it. The things that I enjoy the most is not the weight loss stuff and not the aesthetic stuff. You can pick up clients who want to lose weight, pick up clients who want to look like a bodybuilder. But the thing that I always really enjoy are the clients with the goals that are, I want to be physically stronger, more prepared, or if they're recovering from an injury and they need to strengthen something specific, that's my favorite because it's quite technical. And I feel you have to be really efficient with these people, especially if they're coming back from injury. You have to give them the right amount of load, intensity, volume that helps them progress, but doesn't injure them further or doesn't set them back. And then the same with people who are coming into strength for the first time, who recognize they need to be stronger. There's a balancing act of how much time does this person have? How much will does this person have? Because, it's not their hobby. It was my hobby, but it's maybe not their hobby. They're doing it out of necessity. You've got to make it fun. You've got to make it manageable and efficient so they can come in, get the job done, and it helps them get stronger. So it's quite technical, and I really like that.
The thing I've found, and we're getting towards the end here, I've been surprised how, for us, we feel it's a necessity. It's not one of our main things, but actually this year, it actually has felt to be somewhat more consuming of my time, and I've definitely been doing far less biking and less running. It's just, I don't know why. It's just, I think maybe it's been a bit tiring. Maybe I'm working new bits that I'm not used to working.
Yeah.
Which is, it's slightly embarrassing to admit, actually, that it's tiring me out a bit more than I thought it would.
But I think that's a great sign. So the one thing that we can measure, people ask me this all the time, how do I know I'm getting stronger? Performance. It's the thing that you can measure, is performance. And how we measure whether somebody is getting stronger, there's a couple of things we want to look out for. One, at the end of the session, does this person feel worked? You know, you don't have to rag them around, you don't have to make them feel totally exhausted, but they shouldn't be able to achieve at the end of the session what they were able to achieve at the beginning of the session. So they've accumulated enough fatigue that we know we've worked them, that there's going to be an adaptation. The second thing is that we should see that if they even cycle less than ever before, they're still achieving the same, if not more, than they could before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the fact that you are feeling tired, to me, says you're working hard enough in the gym to create an adaptation. It's a good sign.
Good.
If you were not tired, I'd be like, well, you're not doing enough.
Okay, I'm not, right, great.
I should stress I am never going to be a weightlifter, but thanks to Emma, I've enjoyed the challenge of learning something new and surprised myself by persisting. The Older Athletes series on the YouTube channel has a few videos outlining exactly what exercises Emma prescribed for us and how we do them to fit around our lives. If you've enjoyed this, you might consider buying me a coffee. The price of a flat white will help keep the show on the road. It goes towards the hosting and other fees. Links are in the show notes, in the video description, and at alwaysanotheradventure.com. I'm Simon Willis. Thank you for listening and watching. Goodbye.